This is actually part of the contract.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure everyone's happy with me here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to come back for more. You know, Kelly Slater, look out, bro. The goat's
Look out.
real.
The goat's real.
And then I look into his eyes like this on camera. The goat's real.
What's going on, everyone? I'm Nils, and this is the Backcountry podcast, a show aimed towards providing insight on the outdoor industry by interviewing people who operate within it. Today, we have Andrew Alexander King, a mountaineer, a surfer, and a well-branded goatee-wearing badass.
Yeah,
What's up, man?
Nothing much, man. Thanks for having me. This goatee is actually really good. I think I feel like Kelly Slater right
How
now.
long have you been growing that thing?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. That's incredible.
I think the adhesive is getting into my skin.
You know, it took me, it took seconds to shave off.
Yeah, it's removable.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but thanks for having me. This is great. I'm going to put it right here because I love these for my surfboards. They're actually really cool.
So what's going on, man? What have you been up to recently? You're kind of a jack of all trades in many avenues. I'm pretty psyched to get into all of these places that you're developing yourself as a human being.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, most recently, what's been going on?
Grateful to be here in Park City, Utah. First time ever here, actually. Second time ever in the state of Utah. So came out here for ReadyWise. Actually did my first signature meal with them. So it's really cool to have my name on a package on a meal. It's really crazy. Growing up in Detroit where I couldn't really afford food, and now I actually have my name on a meal that is vegan and gluten-free and actually helps other people and helps the environment.
Well,
so it's really cool. So I'm really stoked to be here for that, and the team that supported. It took a year in the making to get it right, especially as someone that does multi-level sports. You know, food is something that keeps me fuel. It's fuel keeps me going. So he invited me out, and then, Matt, the rest of you, Taylor, the crew was like, hey, come to the headquarters, come be goatee. And I came out and I've been here. So yeah.
Cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now we were kind of just chatting about it a little bit before we started the show, and it's cool to see balancing surfing through the winter.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of just wrapping up your mountaineering, more alpinism season. How are those two?
They're good. So big wave surfing starts for me November. So I go to Portugal where I live about a quarter of my life throughout the year. So training with the team out there, Daniel, Lino, Joao, Eduardo, Jojo, everybody. Thank you all. They've basically for the past 3 years trained with them from pool to small waves to big waves. And they didn't give me the green light until the third year to actually go towing at Nazare, which was the hardest surfing experience I've ever had.
How so?
Because towing is different. I think when people are like, oh, towing's easy, it's actually a fairly different because you're activating muscles to pull yourself up. So it's like wakeboarding on a giant wave. I'm like, no, it's not. That's not even the same at all, because you're doing rope management. You're having to really disengage, read the wave at the same time, and then match the speed that you let go of. So you have to do a lot of reading versus when you're paddling, you're kind of just being able to get to that point you can match that wave. And it's a little bit more technical and scarier when it's bigger because the consequences are on 2 people instead of 1. And what I mean by that, as soon as that person lets go of that rope, and at Nazare, you could wipe out poorly. The board isn't, there's no leash, so you can tear your ACL, you can take a big headbang. Those waves are pretty mutiny when they get to a certain size, and then you got to get picked up by your jet ski partner. So you got to be able to 5 seconds, Army style or Marine style pickup. Get on that jet ski and be holding on for dear life while it's cranked. I'm talking cranking, and you're
fully pinned.
Yeah. So I'm glad I rock climb because these forearms are great. When I'm locked in, I'm I'm good. I'm not letting go of anything. But it's a whole skill that you just can't roll up and do. It takes time and commitment. They worked with me for 3 years out there, the Portuguese community, and they gave me the green light, and it's been good since.
Dude, that's so cool. How did you even? I'm curious how you even make those first steps too, because I think a lot of people are, could understand getting into surfing. I grew up surfing, and I'm getting into surfing now a little bit later in life. But then it seems like the logistics and the commitment to get into big wave surfing is a complete overhaul.
Yeah, so I grew up in Detroit. Like I said, so no one in my family surfed, climbed, didn't really do swimming at all. So our family is very landlocked. A lot of snowball throwing. Track and field was what I did in college because it was the cheapest thing we could do and afford. And so it was we'll get back to that later. So when my grandparents adopted me, we got, stationed in Hawaii. And the reason why they adopted me is because my mom isn't great. She's a fucking, I don't know if I could say that on this, but anyway, she's an amazing mom.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful soul, and I love her so much because she is a dual parent. She got to be, my dad wasn't there, so my mom stepped in and took care of us. And so I really wanted to go to college, something in our family that never happened, and retired tree. And I loved going to school, and my grandparents and my family, my uncles, my mom, banded together, and we did it and got to college. So I did track and field. But prior to that, we moved to Hawaii. I taught myself how to swim, worked at golf courses and Sears, and bought my first surfboard, which, Caleb C Money here actually saw, and I still have it in my quiver. And then I just went out to Almanawil Bowls and, taught myself how to surf. A lot of wash machine moments. Went up to the North Shore, got destroyed at sunset, which I thought every wave was that size. I thought that was normal around the world. And then from there, I stuck with it. When I got to college, I had to take it back because I had a D1 scholarship, so I couldn't hurt myself. But that framework of training and discipline and listening to coaches and seeking out those that are looking, that are better than you, and you being more coachable. I took that same framework, and basically I knew the moment I took off on probably my first double overhead wave that it was my thing. I knew at this moment, the moment I ran my hand down the wave and I just feel it. And I do that on all the waves, that you can just see my hand just touch it. I'm not doing it to slow myself down all the time, but I'm just doing it because it just feels so good. And I knew this was it. I was like, this is what I want to do. And then climbing and hiking was the same in Hawaii. I would just hike up, meditate, and if the sun was still up and I still had time, I'd go down and surf in the same day. And I thought that was hiking or climbing. And then when someone was like, no, this is climbing. Here's a rope and a figure eight. And I was like, what the hell is this? So, yeah.
Dude, wild. I kind of want to, let's get into it with Detroit to Hawaii too, because that seems like a very formative, pivotal part of your story that then has kind of led to footsteps in a really impressive direction.
Thanks, man. I think it's a place where, I'm grateful to be born there. I think I tell people with the Between Worlds Project, when I founded and how I got to that, no one that I know of in this world got a chance to be asked where they wanted to be, placed in this world. You just come out as Black, white, Hispanic, what your gender is and such. You don't really give a sense your class. You don't get a chance to ask those questions. And I was just my lottery ticket was you're African American, you're born in Detroit, you don't have a father, but you have a mother and you have siblings and you have a good support system. I knew at that point, I was control what you can control. I know the people that love me are still around. And I'm not going to even go search for someone that doesn't want, I'm going to love the people that are here now and love life, what I got. And so I just grew up in that neighborhood where we grew up in a pretty turbulent neighborhood, but you don't know what you don't know at that point as a kid. So drive-by shootings or going to Halloween, we couldn't get normal candy that way. All our candy had to always get checked. So we'll go Halloween trick-or-treating, but we wouldn't get it back for about a week or two because it had to go through getting checked to make sure nothing was in it, because that was a common thing there. And then sometimes at school, kids wouldn't show up because either they were having to stay at home and watch their siblings, or they just were injured or killed in shootings. And my grandparents really in our family just really was there's got to be a change. And we really just pushed through that. And so that is where that mental toughness came into. And I tell people they're like, what's the highest mountain you've ever climbed? Or what's the hardest mountain you ever climbed? And I say, it's actually just going to school every day. Going from being you don't get to be a kid, you actually had to grow up so fast. And so now when I'm surfing and climbing, people are like, is it hard? I'm like, all I have to do is just trust myself, trust Mother Nature, and do what I've been trained to do. And trust my coaches and the people that the guides that help me be through it. Everything else is going to be okay. I'm not trying to outrun a bullet today. I'm not trying to outrun someone trying to jump me. I'm just trying to enjoy the presence that Mother Nature's giving me right now to find my peace. If she wants to take me today and I've done everything I could, I'm at peace with that. And I've gone further than most people that didn't even get to leave those 3 blocks or 4 blocks ever. So that's my mindset.
Wow, dude. Yeah. Being able to develop that mental toughness at such it sounds through your childhood, right? Until teenage years?
Teenage years, yeah.
Okay. And then, that is a accelerated path to develop your mindset, but then it's a double-edged sword, right? And the asset being your decision making, your critical thinking, your fear management, your rationality of the situations you find yourself in various forms of Mother Nature. are well developed.
Yeah, I would say there's fact or fear. Here's a fact: the wave is coming at you. That's a fact. It is developing. You could see it. You're going to you're going to let go of this rope. Fear is like, I'm going to wipe out immediately. I'm going to be held under for 2 waves. My inflatable vest won't pull. The canister won't go. It malfunction. That's a fear. So you're creating this. And it's the saying, I forgot who says this, and I may paraphrase this. You suffer more imagination than in reality. So let's just open the facts there. I am in Nazare right now. There's 4 teams out here. I say if I even wipe out really hard and something goes wrong, I'm in my inflatable vest. I also have my impact vest under that. So even if something does go wrong and I'm wearing orange, I will be rescued in a certain amount of time. It's not a heavy day, a big day, but it's like one that I still take seriously. So I break it all down. Let's break them. Then it's like, fact is, you are prepared. So fear is like very very small at that point, and goes like, go do what you came to do. And you're able to like breathe into it and be in that. And the same thing when it comes to alpinism, which I didn't know alpinism was a thing a decade ago. I really didn't have a clue. And honestly, to be honest with you, man, if someone was like, yo, dude, you're going to be climbing, or texting Conrad and like saying hi to him in Chamonix, and he's going to be like telling you all these cool things, and you're going to be doing it like a year later, I'd be like, yeah, shut up, man. That's not going to be me.
Or you would have been asking who Conrad is.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was exactly what I would ask him. I'm like, who? Sounds like a bird. Conrad Anchor? That's a pirate.
What's their wingspan?
Exactly.
What's ship size?
What's his wingspan? What? Maru? Sounds like a dish. But like for me, it was really interesting to move into that space. So when I got into alpinism, I felt that let me just, take a step back. Prior to that, climbing was high altitude trekking. So I was starting off doing volcanoes around the world because I just wanted to go up, meditate, learn about the culture and community, give back to them, and come down and surf if I could in the same day. So like I think the highest mountain I haven't climbed in an ocean is in Antarctica at this point. And I think for me, that's all it was about. It wasn't, and then I was like, I'm not going to love this cold thing too much. And then I moved into it, and my body was just already well done for, doing track and field. So my legs were just used to doing that long distance and carrying packs. And even being an asthmatic, I was doing better than I thought. And then when I learned how to like sport climb, I've only been sport climbing for probably the last 3 years religiously, maybe 2.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't too in love with it. Bouldering, I was just doing so, I could get stronger at sport climbing. But then at alpinism, when I went to Chamonix 3 years ago, I put it all together, and that was it. It was the same feeling from big wave surfing. It was like, this is your love. Like, this is the other hand that you've been missing. So when I get my gear on, my ice axes, crampons, got my down jacket, helmets on, put my buff on, glasses or goggles on, checking all the harness and all my gear. And as soon as I walk out on the massif or the glacier, it's like, so like even in my head right now, it's like listening to Frank Sinatra, just chilling, come fly with me.
It's what you should be doing.
Yeah. It's like, it just feels natural.
Yeah.
And all my friends have seen it. They're like, oh, he looks natural out here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I feel like you're kind of tapped into something that you see a lot of people maybe in outdoor sports or action sports do. Yeah. And that's this balance between ocean and mountains, surfing and climbing or skiing or snowboarding or something like that. And is there like something you kind of gather from the ocean that you don't get from the mountains and vice versa? You know what I mean? Like, is there a way they balance each other out? Because like for me, there's just like balance, right? Like I go to the ocean and I feel like I'm healing in a sense. And I go to the mountains and I feel like I'm hardening
Yeah, well, I always think like this. The mountain is a reflection of your soul. Mm-hmm. The rock is reflecting back to you what you are. That fear, that I'm cocky, I'm confident, I'm calm, I'm collected, I'm scared, I'm crying. That piece of rock is a mirror that's just sitting there, just reflecting all of that back to you. And so for me, I'm just like, when I climb, I'm like, if I'm scared or insecure, that rock is going to tell me, that mirror's going to come back. And it's like, take the time, be accountable, and like ask yourself these questions. When it comes to surfing, that is the environment of change for me. So it's like, you're getting this wave has traveled so far. You, besides maybe a few dolphins and other fish and, wildlife in the ocean, are going to ride it. But after that, it hits the shore, it's done. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. So like, it's asking you to be fully present. Don't feel like, oh, I wish this wave was this. I'm like, you don't get to say any of that. Like, it's gone. Like, there will never be another wave like that. It will break. There'll be a set, but that set may have a different section. It may break a little bit different. You may not get into the barrel. You may not have to like take off differently, but no wave is ever the same. And it's kind of like showing you how a day in your life is. It's never the same. Every sunset's different. So for me, if you put those two together, you're actually in this like beautiful balance of life and how to actually like navigate through it. And it's not going to do it perfect. You're actually going to be like iterative and like have like, again, chaotic moments, but it's going to be like take it back and like have some clarity to it. So yeah.
That's such like a cool internal perspective to put on it, because in alignment with how you see that, I totally agree. You know, when like I'm climbing, I feel that I'm almost like that route is always going to be there for the most part. Yeah. If it's solid.
Exactly. It's solid. It's solid. If it's
for the most part, it's always going to be there.
Right.
And if anything, you're kind of like almost honoring the person that established it, or you're like getting to experience what all these other people experienced, as with maybe riding POW or surfing or something like that. Like that medium is always changing and it's different every time, and you kind of just have to like adapt and flow with it and like go with whatever it gives you. And that gives you this like two different forms of appreciation that I think are pretty powerful to help balance out an individual.
They do. My friend who, I'm going to do a shout out to her, Hilary Goddard, who just set the FTK for Mount Blanc.
Sick.
She just did it the other day.
That's awesome.
She is a powerhouse of a person. She's a Skyrun ultra runner, so love you, big sis. She straight up, we went running, and when I go running with her in Chamonix, it's always, I'm like, I know it's going to hurt. And so we're running, and she goes, Andrew, I think the reason why alpinism is intriguing to you and you love it is because just like in surfing, it's ever changing. And I was like, I never thought of it like that. She goes, yeah, like in surfing, you have to adapt to that wave. The section, the barrel, how it's covering, like if it's flattening out, if it's like, caving. Alpinism is the same way. It's like, yeah, you can go out and be like, okay, it's nice skies. A system rolls in. You're getting dumped with snow. You have to keep on the right. You set gear differently. The rock could be a little bit different today. The permafrost could be, a little bit low. So all of those things, I never looked at it like that until she told me. And I was like, this makes sense. She's like, that's the same. And you're also accountable a lot more in that because it's ever changing. And you also get to change your up versus sport climbing, which I've always had a very interesting path with, because like, if I can't grip that yet, that hold, you're kind of cruxed at it. You're stuck. There's no if, and, or but. You're like, that's it. Game over. Go back to the gym. Get on your train. But in alpinism, you're required to be, bouldering, mountaineering, sport climbing, ice climbing, first aid, dry tooling, all of those things. And you don't have to be like A+ at them, but you have to be able to like activate them in the proper sense. And so that for me is where it's like, oh, this is way more fun, just like riding a wave. It's like big wave surfing. You're like, oh, okay, cool. This wave's coming in different now. So I'm going to take off a little bit deeper, not a little bit. I'm going to hold it a little bit longer. I'm going to switch up my board. My board's going to be a little bit different. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. And this is kind of like, this is maybe a more broad spectrum perspective, but like you had a history with track and field, you're a D1 athlete. Yep. Why, like, what was it that drew you more towards surfing instead of being like, oh, I just want to keep running or training or something like that, what was special about surfing that, and I suppose alpinism to a degree, that like, and the outdoors that like made you coming back for more every time?
So I still run. I actually went from doing sprinting. So I competed for 13 years in it. So all through, and that I knew that my academia was going to get our family to college. That was legit what I set out to do. I was like, my grandparents, we all agreed, this is what you're going to do. So from a young age, I was like, this is going to not just help you, but everyone else behind you. And I thought of that like, so when it came to me in like, I think it was like junior year of college, I was like, I'm not going to the Olympics. Bro, you were 5'4" on a good day. Maybe 5'5" with some like stilts on, bro. But you're not doing anything, superb to be Olympian or professional. And I fell in so deep. I was like, so can I go surf some more? Can I keep doing that? But I still run. I run about, 10 miles every week. And that's just the way I keep up with it. So I do a 3-3, and that's part of my conditioning. So I have weightlifting, bouldering, practice, then surfing practice, and then I have conditioning and cardio, which is that running in it. So I'll never stop running. I just now have a direction of why I run. And I think when you're growing up in a very environment like that, we did track and field because you had to actually run a lot. I remember the first time I ran home from school when I saw a kid with a gun, I ran as fast as I could. I remember hearing gunshots and always outrunning them. And that was the catalyst when I got in the blocks for track and field, competing in it. I just took the negative framing of the gunshot. And when I heard it, I would just run for my life. I don't have to run for my life anymore. So it's at this point now, I'm just like, I think at that point I was like, you're at peace. You're finding that place. Like you don't have that. I can hear gunshots now and be like this, cool, sweet. I mean, I hope they're fireworks or something, or the 4th of July, great. But I think now I don't have to do that to really survive or help that point of it. So when it came to climbing and surfing, those are places of peace. And I always relate it to people like this. There's 3 tools that I think about in life and what I like to build, which is connection with people and a legacy that outlives where I stand today, and the next person up can outstep that and be way better than where I am and not have to struggle. So I hope an individual hearing this is like, I'm in a bad situation, but I hope you're hearing that it's an individual that there's certain light that you just can keep consistent with. And track is one of those tools I had, but now it's big wave surfing, alpinism, and technology. And so when I got into surfing, I just felt more at peace with it. I felt like I wasn't ever going to be harmed by Mother Nature in a way that she didn't intentionally want. She's not like that. And then alpinism is just the seek of adventure to sit up on top of a mountain and meditate and feel at peace. And I keep coming back to it because every time I feel that I'm actually significant, those things make me feel insignificant in a good way. And it makes me see that it's not about you per se, it's about building that bridge to see what's out there. So I think when you stand up on top of a mountain, most people say I conquered a mountain or I conquered a wave. That doesn't exist, in my opinion. I don't think you can ever conquer something that's outlived your entire family tree. You know what I mean? That you cannot conquer something that takes up majority of this planet. And without it, you would not exist. You need it more than it needs you. So it's a place to connect. It's a place to stand and relate to people. It's a place when you get to the top of the mountain, you see other for who they are as far as you come, and you go back down as well as yourself. So I think for me, it's always been about what are these tools? And they just happen to be those tools for me right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. That was really well said. And
Thanks.
That's a really cool introspective perspective to have on it all.
Thanks,
and,
man.
It kind of makes me want to transition a little bit
Sure.
into this entire purpose and journey
Sure.
you're carving for yourself to, it seems, share how valuable and try to empower other people into how valuable having that internal perspective and experiences are. And
Yes.
where did that change take place? Let's start there.
I think the change took place is when you make it out of a situation. Let's say we're in a burning building right now, right? And your friends are still in there. You want to go back in, right? And get them. I think that change comes from, again, that lottery ticket. If I would have grown up in, let's say, a mansion and my parents were, duchess and dukes, it probably would not have been for me. I don't know. I can't really say, but I can hypothesize that. But I think growing up where I grew up and I saw so many people that really just wanted to just live. And you can't live without loving something. And if you don't love where you are, you have that love to actually know what it is in that definition. That's a very hard thing to actually comprehend and solidify in yourself. And so for me, I used to be very shy and very insecure. And I still do have insecurities. And they do come out and I embrace them and I go through therapy and I sit down and meditate with myself and actually how to overcome those moments. But those days that I think back to is when you make it out of a place and the people that you've grown up with are still there, or people that you can relate to are still there, and you see around the world that want to be there, and you're in the position to influence that, why not use that? Because I don't get to take anything with me when I transition out of this life. I get a cool tombstone, hopefully, or, spread across a volcano or some, ocean, but it's better to know that my niece, nephew, your friends, everyone here, Taylor, Cammie, everyone group here is we built something together that the next generation is inspired by, and they do cooler things than us. And if I'm still alive by then, I always say this, that they'll be like, yeah, there's old man King walking down the street writing poetry, not knowing anything. I'm like, oh, you should definitely wax your board more. And they're like, nah, dude, nah. And they're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, Mr. King. I definitely don't, And so that is the cool part of seeing the next generation come up and step up and be more confident in their voice, not cocky and conceited, but confident in who they are, what they are. sitting on a stable ground, and it's unified about not just one demographic, but a group of people that really want to understand and get through these conversations together. So it just comes down to seeing where I grew up and knowing that people are in places that you can't, how can I put it? You can't save those that can't save themselves. And I think what I mean by that is like when you jump in a pool to help someone that's drowning too, or going back in the analogy of the fire in the building, if that person's like, I'm going to stay here, you can give them the choice to say like, I know a way out, come with me, let's do this. But just give that person a choice and let them actually formulate as you go through it. And so that was always my philosophy on it. My grandparents gave me that choice. My mom gave me that choice. My late grandmother, Matt and Taylor, the team here, have given me those choices. And I just want to see other people have those choices as well.
Yeah, the ability to make those choices.
Yeah, just to do it.
How have you been able to start implementing that?
So I started the Between Worlds project, which is basically, when I got to college and I got my master's, and, I still work a full-time job, which this is my lunch break right now. So
yeah, I am curious about that. Real side note, what did you go to college for, and what is your full-time job?
So I'm going to tell you what I went to college for, and I'm going to tell you that it's pretty funny. So it's actually, I went to college for mass communication. I'm a minor in political science and women's studies. I know nothing about the opposite sex still. Nothing. I just legit get ghosted all the time. I think it's just, I'm just not there, man. So I know nothing. No, I'm just kidding. I think just be a nice person. But it taught me, I took women's studies because I already knew what it was like is being, like, I already made up my mind, like, you're a heterosexual male. So the other side of this, you need to understand what that is like. If you're going to communicate, have some empathy and understand, and like just try to see what that is like. And it's helped me throughout my entire life. Well, I failed anthropology 4 times, by the way. But now everyone thinks like, oh, you go to these communities, these different villages and culture, and you interact really well. And I was like, I think that's definitely from being curious and the women's studies part of it. Political science helped with like later on in life, with like negotiations and such. And then communication just breaks down to how to really sum up a thought. So I read a lot of poetry and I published that poetry. It's like, how do I actually formulate that? And then I went in to get my master's in integrated marketing and concentrated in computer science. And then I went into work in tech. So I worked at the Patriots, which, Jess Gilman, my mentor, who really, put me on for 1 season there to work there and gave me a really good opportunity and choice to be like, you can be good, you can be great, or you can be, just mediocre. And she really pushed me, as well as like, Jim and the team there. So after that, went to go work for Lego, work for Live Nation and Ticketmaster and project management and program and portfolio management. And now I work in cybersecurity doing project and program management. And so that is my full-time job. And that full-time job it's been remote for a few years, but I take that capital. About 10 years ago, I decided that when I go to a place to climb or surf, to give back to those communities. So I work with small nonprofits that don't have huge capitals or, C-level, like, VC funding. And I go and we interview each other, we see what they need, and I give them what they need, not what I think they need. And then I don't, I've been in volunteerism. It's sometimes where I've been a gardener, I've been someone that helps with medical supplies, I've had to pick up school supplies, I've been a janitor, I've helped with like women's rights and making sure like, individuals that are in, not so great situations were able to get out of those situations and have places to like a safe house to be in. So using my capital from my normal job to help fund those initiatives around the world, from sexism, racism, inequality, and climate change, and make sure the right people are given that platform and space and sustainable monetary needs and resources is what I do. But that's just, again, the 3 levels of like surfing and climbing and technology. And I just use that to give it back.
Yeah. Wild. And that's
wild.
I think it's wild, right? Like, to me, I'm just like, dang, that seems like a lot to try balance. And like, has there been a learning curve even to that? I can just imagine that, it's a lot to stay on top of.
Yeah, I balance it out, and there's been some hard parts at point. People are like, you're a full-time professional athlete or influencer. I don't think people even know how to put me in a box, and I'm okay with that. You guys can just keep having those terms, but they're all just terms. But most of the time, people are like, oh, you make enough money off of the things I see you do. I'm like, a lot of my contracts are not to be egregious for a certain reason. They're actually meant to be baselines for future athletes coming in. So I don't have it to where like I'm going to go milk this company for everything it has. It's like I'm very intentional about partnerships and people I work with, because I'm really thinking about who is that athlete that maybe couldn't go to college. They may had to stay home with their brothers and sisters, no matter what they are, who they look like, and take care of the family at an early age. And they may be really talented, but they may not have had the ability to get to that level of education needed to have that safety net of like, that I would say the corporations you work for, or that funding. So when I think of them, like with brands from like, Black Diamond, Backcountry, Scarpa, ReadyWise, He Summit, like Everman Jack, we always think about like, anytime we work together, we donate to nonprofits. And that's in my contracts. We have to do that, or I just won't work. And any shoots I do commercially, it's the same thing. We have to donate back and help people. And it's because we want to make sure that that individual has a choice and is given resources. They may not need to know where that, safety net or that rope that's trying to like belay them up is coming from, but we want to make sure that they have that, security from somewhere. So for me, it does get crazy at times because like I have an agent, I have a publicist, and I built out that team like that. I was like, we need these people that like, I have to focus on work today. Can you take over the contract and look at it? I can't look at all of it. Hey, should I be doing this podcast here today? Does it make sense? You know what I mean? And all of those things. And we make sure that we're not forgetting about what the truth is at the end of it. Because when my goal is this decade is over, I would love to see more athletes of diverse backgrounds, cognitively, racially, sexually, step in and be like, I'm safe, the gear's good, I'm warm, I'm in a safe place, I can communicate my needs, and we can meet in the middle ground, and I can keep pushing it forward. And so when it comes to balance, I think if you really come from the heart and you love what you do and what you see in the mirror, then you're really just walking truthfully through life. And some days I fall at it and I suck at it, and there's been days where like I had to learn from it in the industry. Some days I've been sticking up for things, and like people are like, well, Andrew went from being really zen to like really straightforward. And I'm like, because I know what's at stake. And it's not just me thinking about like what's at stake. I'm like, there's other people that I know that they will not probably have that confidence to communicate like that. And if I don't do this in this position right now, I'm doing myself a disservice, the brand a disservice, and the community a disservice. So
yeah. And this all happens with your Between Worlds project.
Every day.
That's what it is.
Yep. And so the point of my project is like climbing the highest mountain and volcano and the surfing the biggest wave on each continent. That's just a vehicle, dude. That's like a Volkswagen van that I'm just driving down the PCH in right now. And people are just jumping in and out, eating Doritos and, eating their little Funyuns and like popcorn and getting the seat all greasy and stuff and chipping in on gas money. At some point in a decade, I said to people, it has to be someone else's turn. Like if I'm still here doing this and like the next person up in Between Worlds Project or Foundation isn't there, then I didn't do anything besides just boost my ego up. And it's a little bit of fine balance because you have to think of the social capital where people are like, you have to give into that. And you also have to train and show people like, I didn't grow up as an alpinist. I didn't grow up as a big wave surfer. I legit still get coached by people and I pay for guides for that to be trained for this. But the next person up, I'm like, you can do this. I know you can do it. You got to believe in yourself, believe in the process. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be happy. And I will support you on it. And you may not always love the advice I give, but at the end of the day, you'll see the bigger picture. And I'll just be an old dude, chilling out writing poetry, getting ghosted.
There you go.
It's all good.
And do you have a cool perspective, right? Because you're thinking ahead and honestly being realistic with yourself of thinking like, well, maybe this isn't going to be my lifestyle forever. And there will be like a changing of the guard time. And I want to facilitate, not only do I want to, facilitate all these projects and like your metaphor, the van going down the highway is a good way to put it. But like being able to pass that baton to the next generation, if you will. And honestly, I can kind of relate to that in the sense of snowboarding, and because there's just like so many nuances to learn about just even like the specific style of like backcountry riding and locations and how you go about it and what's like the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. And you do need mentors. I had mentors, and like I'm kind of realizing I'm like always going through the timeline. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of approaching my age that like it's going to be time to start like giving back and help give resources to the next generation. Are you currently already doing that, or are you still waiting on the perfect protege?
No, I think at the end of the day, you're never going to be perfect, man. Everything's imperfected. You know, I think I've been on shoots with people here, and I've been on other stuff where it's like you bring your friends on, like, you know, bringing in Dominic Barry, who's an amazing athlete on the shoot. And I knew Dom was like, he's like, that is, if someone I would love to be on it, I would be the happiest person if we become the same backcountry teammate. Sorry, I didn't plug in there, Matt and Taylor. Just saying, but
good.
Yeah. So, you know, when I look at Elle, when Elle and I are like brother and sister, you know, she did her first Alpine route with me. But I've also been on shoots with Elle. Like she's an amazing rock climber. Okay. You know, so going in the Alps and doing that with her and her trusting me to do that and watching other people do it. So I don't think there's any right time to do something. I think there's a good quote again where you just do it. I know that's, you know, Phil Knight from that Nike saying that, but when you just do that, when you feel in your heart like this person is worth that time, it's up to the mentee or the individual you're giving it to make the decision after that. And I didn't have mentors besides, you know, in business and on the outdoor space. It's very interesting in mentorship because everyone's like, well, mentorship should be continuous. And I just talked to Adrian Ballinger about this at Strava with Caroline as well. It's like, none of us, Adrian's had like 3 mentors and he's so successful and amazing. He's a sweetheart. And like, I love Adrian's energy and his personality. Like, he's a cool human being. Him and Emily are a powerhouse couple. And I think that little amazing ball of joy that they have is going to be just nothing but a love and, you know, advocate for outdoors, what they do. But we were discussing, he was like, yeah, I didn't have mentors. And they're like, how did you get here? I was like, I've been doing this for 13 years. And no one knew who I was until like George Floyd happened. They're like, we have no athletes of color. And I was like, well, you never planted the seed in your garden. And so if you're going out to look for carrot soup you want for your host, your team, your guests coming, and you're like, oh, I don't have any carrots. I'm like, because you have to plant and nurture it. And so now I think people are being like, it's hard to be a mentor because that takes a lot. You have to make time in your schedule. You have to follow up. You have to like guide. I've had people call, you know, Conrad has been one that checks in. Elle checks in on me, you know, really, really. Dom is always there in my head when I'm climbing out in like, you know, Portugal. So there's certain people around the world that, you know, check in. Melissa Reed checks in. She goes like, hey, Andrew, how you doing? You know, she brought me to the Himalayas and she showed me what I thought mountaineering was. I was like, I got to Himalayas, like, no, that's PhD level. When I got to Himalayas with Melissa, I was just like, she showed me that everything I did up to that point.
This is big.
Everything, because she actually works with the Jupiter Fund, which she takes care of, you know, Sherpas that pass away, their families. And that was like, to my heart, she's like, she can climb it. This woman literally ran from, I think, Namche all the way to Everest Base Camp in a day. And
how
back.
Far?
It's far, bro. At altitude, that is far. And she just like shows up, and we've been hiking for like 2 or 3 days, and she's just like, hey guys, my sunscreen's all out of whack and everything, and I'm just like smelling like I don't even know anymore because I can't smell it. But she just shows up, and I'm like, she hiked with her, you know, newborn up to a place that gives her peace and solidarity. And so when you think of mentors, I think it's like, as a mentee, look at that person and know that that person has a full life. And that person is giving a lot of two different things. And in the outdoor space, try to really be like, that person's giving you a key here to unlock within yourself. And they're going to be like, they can't hold you to it anymore. So for me, when you ask giving back, that comes in many forms and different facets. It's like, I sit down with athletes that have contracts, and I'm like, here's my agent, go to them and discuss your contract if you're trying to get something. Do you need gear? You know, do we need actually to bring you on to actually go somewhere around the world and climb? And so if I meet an individual that's super passionate about it, I'm thinking, I remember what it's like to be like that. I can't give you everything that you probably want, but I'm going to give you something that is from the heart, and I will be here for your lifeline if you need it. And if you go somewhere in the world, you're like, I'm stuck, call and make that happen. And people know me as like that in the industry at this point. They're like, is he like, you know, doing like V11s or V12s? No. But am I always showing up and making sure that that person is like top of mind in hard conversations and making sure they're advocated for? Yes, because the people before me did the same. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, dude, that's like so much more powerful too than trying to pursue the next biggest mountain or the next hardest grade or the next biggest wave. Like those things are awesome and they're great vehicles and it's like cool personal journeys that you get to go through. But yeah, the real empowering aspect is being able to like make those connections and pass down examples, almost like social examples.
Yeah, I think when, Melissa, she showed me that in Himalayas, just like, you could climb the highest mountain. Like, she's done it 6 times, but she's well more like known for what she's given to the Nepalese people and the Jupiter Fund, what they've done.
Yeah.
And I think for me as a climber and surfer, that's what I think about then, is like, how can I actually push that to where like no one's going to open books and be like, yo, dude, this guy climbed like, Everest and Srinathra at 800 feet in the same day. It's going to be like, what did you do for other people to actually do it like you did and be better than you at it? And then are you able to extract your ego and be like clapping for them as they do it? And that's what I think about, like how, like even watching like the Full Circle Everest team go up, everyone's like, oh, you were part of that. And I was like, no, that was like me riding the bench in the NBA finals and just being stoked that your team is going, because the precipitation from that event will cascade to other parts of the industry. And it shows your character, how you root for those people that are succeeding and you're not part of it. Well, you're a part of it, but you're not like the main nucleus of it. And that's where it's like, how do you give and like appreciate and let them have that and let them have that moment open? So for me, that's what I think about. And that's what I felt for the climbing. Like, not gonna lie, I'm excited to do some North Faces in the Alps. I do want to do the North Face of the Grand Duras, Eiger, Mont Blanc, all of those things, like Matterhorn. And I will do those things if I survive. But at the end of the day, like, I hope people recognize me not for the number of mountains or waves I serve. It's like, how many doors did you open? How many houses did you build? And how many safe spaces that people come and feel themselves and actually have a choice to move forward?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's well said.
Thanks, man.
I like that. I kind of want to talk about the top 20 most influential people of the outdoor industry.
Okay. Yeah, give me.
How did that come about? Because, your story and perspective is so like, I can tell that you're focused and you're smart and you kind of have your lane figured out. Yeah. Was that like, when that recognition came, did it kind of help fuel your fire down your current journey? Or was it just sort of this like, all right, yeah, like, sick, I'm going to keep doing this though. It's like,
the answer,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. You answer your question honestly. What you're doing now, you should be doing it as when the lights are off and then when they're turned on. And so it hasn't changed much. I turned off my comments because people were giving me some creepy comments and some tough things. And also it made me recognize that for me, Instagram is a journal. You're watching an individual grow up. I am an adult, yeah, but you're seeing someone grow up and be like, wow, this guy. And I talked to Ted Hester the other day, and he was like, man, you're really getting at it now. I was like, yeah, but no one's ever filmed me actually do any of these things, but I've always loved doing it. So now you're just seeing like I have the capital and stability to do everything, but also have people like showcase where I'm not using a GoPro or shooting on like my phone. Like you have professional photographers be like, we want to shoot you doing these stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go like, free solo up this thing and go climb. And then people are like, oh, he actually knows what he's doing or he's putting in the work. So back to your question about that, when it came, I cried because my late great grandmother passed away about 1.5 years before that. And I go by Andrew Alexander King, and people are like, well, why do you go by this big giant name? And I go, that is a respect to my family, my great grandmother. There's a video. She's the first person for the Between Worlds Project interview. And like before dementia and like she was taken by, during the COVID period, I'm interviewing her and I asked her what love is. And she's like, tell me what love is. She's like, I love you and you're part of my love. And she goes through my whole name. She goes, this is why that name means so much. I never used to go by that name because it was so powerful. And I was so afraid of like what it meant. And so for her, when I got that, it just made like everything I've sacrificed from leaving Detroit to where I am now made a little bit, that light turned on just a little bit and people got a sense of it. And I think at that point, I wish she would have been there to have been like, it's working. We did it. Like our sacrifice wasn't just for a kid that was like afraid and like, goofy and had to wear braces and, couldn't read for a while. It's like, we did it and we can change some things. And she pushed me to do it. I was so afraid to do it for a while. And she really was like, she pushed me to do it. So I own that name and that award when it came, it's just, the light just came on and I was like, cool, the light works, but you got to keep going. Yeah. So it'll just keep going. And so I'm grateful for that. And the teams that have been with me since day one and the people that are, I always say like life is like a boxing match. Like you get knocked down some days, but when I go back to the corner and I look at the team around me and like the bell rings and I got to go back out, I know I'm okay. So It didn't change a whole lot for me personally, internally. I think it gave more people, just looking at me and be like, what does he do? Why does he do it? And I just know what's in that corner and what's in my heart. And so even if that life turn backs out in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, you're still going to get the same output.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, your sense of like self and identity is separated from it to a degree.
Yeah.
Hearing you talk, man, it's like, I want to talk about like maybe goal setting.
Sure.
And like, it seems, I take it you're a goal setter. Do you consciously have like, this is where I want to be, big wave surfing.
Yes.
Here's the steps to get there.
Yes.
And obviously you're good at it. I would say you're doing a good job at setting goals and getting there, right? Yeah. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, I was saying about surfing. I was like, I tried my first aerial, and I was like, I'm in the air doing the car roll down window, and I kicked out my board. I was like 360.
Do you have, and I feel like there's so many different areas that you're probably setting goals that are seemingly very separated.
Yeah.
Do you have a hard time, like balancing that sort of like appreciation once you're in the moment and you're accomplishing the thing, to get like to almost allow yourself to have space? Or do you feel like you sometimes get wrapped up in like, okay, sick, like now I got the air, let's go on to the next thing?
No.
Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I think that's a great question. Great question. The answer is no. I do write in my journal, my gratitude journal daily about that. And what I'm grateful for. And I do meditate every morning.
Yeah.
And be like, what am I grateful for?
Yeah.
I do those breaths, and like every breath I get is, again, so I do say those moments. Like I let it cry out. Like, when you're frustrated, people are like, oh, I got to keep these emotions in. Like, no, if you want to cry, go ahead and cry. If you want to drop an F-bomb, drop it. Just not around kids, man. Not around kids. But definitely, but yeah, if you want to do that, I think those emotions come and go. Like, life is an experience that you're unfolding in front of you. Take those moments in. Like, you worked to get there. Have it. Like, like having the meal, like I was just like sitting there being like, wow, someone wanted me to autograph it and sit there. And I'm like, think back, Andrew, when no one knew who that was. No one knew what you were doing or even got what you're doing. Think back to when you couldn't even afford food. Think back what you ate. Think back to what your mom went through to work those jobs. That moment, always take it in. And then you basically take it, you write it down, put it in a bottle, because at some point when it's dark, and it's going to get dark again, drink from that moment. Drink from it and be like, okay, I can still keep going. Because there's times where I'm just like, I'm emotionally exhausted, I'm beat, I'm down. I wrote about a depression post recently where it's like, depression hits athletes really hard. Very hard, especially, high octane athletes that are just like burning it because they're like, I'm going for the gold. I'm going for like the finals. If I don't make it, it's make or bust. I'm like, whoa. You could have the best season, like snowboarding wise, at TTR. You can be like killing it, right? And you'd be like, wow, I didn't get a gold, or I didn't make the Olympics. And I think that's realistic. Yeah, you didn't, but like it doesn't mean for anything. I think that is now your new benchmark. You've now taken that moment. Like, could you have gotten here if you didn't put those steps in at the park? If you didn't put those backcountry, like you didn't put those moments in. And I think when you hit it, you got to take a step back and like take your losses and your appreciations and be like, it's rocket fuel, good, bad, you put together and you keep blasting off.
Yeah.
And just appreciate that. So, yesterday was a big day emotionally all around for me. Like amazing. I just had a great time, hung out with amazing people. And then I was just like, I'm so grateful for this day. And I'm grateful today too. And I know I'm going to have a hard day at some point, but I'm be like, you know what? These are the moments, man. These are the moments. I remember doing a Gucci shoot. We were just recently in New York and I had to do a red eye from Strava. Then same night, red eye, slept on the plane, woke up, going straight to the shoot, shot the, and I'm like, I am literally working with Gucci on my back and climbing a wall in a Gucci coat, which makes no sense, but it's okay, I guess. And then I'm just like, so look at where you are, dude. You're belaying one of the best climbers right now, and people said you could never do this. And yet this person's trusting you for a belay, and you're shooting in one of the most well-known brands, while being able to advocate for the brands that you partnered with, while asking the people that you're shooting with to give back to nonprofits to get more people into this, art and creativity. So like that is a win in itself.
Yeah.
Just to be there.
To be able to take it in and be like, I'm oh, I'm doing it.
I'm doing it. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes you have to really just extrapolate yourself out and get a high level view, like where you're standing now in that process is beautiful. And I think sometimes we get caught up in that destination too much. You should still have a goal, you know?
Yeah.
Like my goal today is like, you know, make sure I don't piss my pants on how much water I've been drinking.
Yeah, there you go.
Like,
Good
but
call.
that destination to the bathroom is great.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great.
No, man, that's a really good perspective, and it's not always easy. And I think it just kind of comes with time as well to appreciate looking back. And that's something I've sort of unpackaged in more recent years with snowboarding. You know, it probably took me 15 years of like pursuing riding to get to a point that like now when I have a success or a failure, I kind of like can take a step back and reflect. And either way, it's like a reflection with appreciation.
And I want to say this, like, you know, that's a good point, because I'll say, you know, I didn't start bouldering heavily until probably this fall. I almost broke my leg the first time I did a few years ago. And I did a high ball and almost snapped it. And I was going to go climb Pico de Zabua. And it took years for that heel just to heal itself. I got back into bouldering and I couldn't do a 5C on the kilter at like anything over 25 degrees. The other day, I'm sitting here in Park City doing like a 6A, flashing it and flashing a 6C. And I'm taking video of it and getting excited and jumping up and down. And my friends are like, oh, you're posting stuff like that. I'm like, I'm happy for those moments. And I'm glad that I think of like Instagram and those spaces as a journal for me, because I know that 7A and above is in my wheelhouse to go there with determination. And it's going to take time for sure. But those moments are going to be beautiful. When's the last time you did something that made you feel so excited that you felt like a kid again? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And people say that to me, like, you're always so stoked to ride and get a wave. I'm like, because that's what you got to remember. Yeah, I do get like bummed. I'm like, oh, I just missed this perfectly good barrel. Or I just, oh man, I could have like done this really better and I like have to like punt it. But just trying and having fun with it, that's the beauty of it. And you'll always get up to ask your question. Like you'll always get up the next day and be like, I'm ready to put in that work for it because that's going to be cool. And so for me, it's like, I think of like looking at Instagram and the way it goes, it's like you're watching someone just have fun and enjoy things and happily and we live. If I change myself, like, you know, like I said, change myself, I grow with it. And if the world a little bit comes a little bit changed and goes a little bit happier or like has a little bit more clarity along that journey, then that's okay, man. That's cool. That's what I think.
Man, that was so well said. That was
Thanks,
really
man.
good. Yeah, that your perspective, dude, is just really thorough.
Thanks,
I
man.
would say, and like it's cool because I can tell that you have had and are conscious of a lot of internal growth.
Yeah,
and like that time and dedication and acknowledgement to yourself.
Well, there are people
now,
like
you know, now shows to like this more external journey that you're going on. And you know, we're sort of coming around to the end of this thing, and I'm just curious, like, what's on your immediate horizon that you're looking forward to and you're psyched on?
Goals.
Yeah.
No, I think the biggest thing is for me is, you know, we're going back to Port Escudino. So Bianca Valenti, she's an amazing big wave surfer, super stoked, big sis. And so I'm going to train more with her to get ready to paddle in at Nazare. You know, so Port Escudino is a very tricky wave, very, very hard wave to really get in. Like it took me 4 days. I was there for like 6 days and I didn't get a wave until the 5th day. That's how hard it was for me to get it. And then I was like on it, cool. And so we're going to get back down there and do some training. I'll do some alpine work and, you know, climbing the highest volcano in North America, which I've done it a few times with my friend Oscar. Speaking of like mentorship, he has its own guiding company. So watching someone that he was my guide years ago and now he has its own company and runs that, it's beautiful to see. You know, we'll work with nonprofits out in the oceanic region for cleaning up plastic and doing some humanitarian work and human trafficking, you know, awareness work as well. So the goal is to climb, you know, Pico de Pujak, which is, you know, Carson's Pyramid out in the highest mountain in the oceanic region. Hopefully surf Chopu, do some stuff around, you know, Tahiti, Coral Garden. Hopefully they're open to it, but they're still rebuilding after the monsoon that came through. And then Australia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Japan, New Zealand, and then we get back ready for fall, and it's good to go for Nazare. So we get into like towing and hopefully paddle into Nazare. The team here will hopefully come down and get to know the Portuguese people, the Hope Zone Foundation with Joao Macedo, and how they actually replant algae along the Nazare coast to really get the biodiversity back and running and pumping. And then do some ice climbing and some cool objectives. Hopefully my first North Face, if the Massif is good to go, and Chamonix. And, just keep learning from people and being a human being at this point, man. I think it's just, I'm a climber and surfer and someone that works in tech by, effort, but I'm a human being at heart. And I think that's just when I keep learning that. And there's a lot of failures on the horizons. There's a lot of successes on the horizon. But at the end of the day, like, as long as I get to see them with my friends and family and grow, that's all that matters, man.
Good. That's awesome. That sounds like a pretty good agenda.
It sounds like a great agenda. Might just go up in smokes, but you never know. I'll be like, I'm gonna pump it like this, like
could end at any minute.
Could end at any minute. You never know these days. The ticky-tock and the kids and the tweeter buds. But yeah, I think I look forward to just what happens next. But I appreciate you guys just having me here,
Yeah.
And I love this setup. I am just in awe of it. Like, I've watched it and be like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'm never going to do that. The Rampage. That's a sport I'll never do.
Mountain biking?
No. Hard no, bro. Like, backcountry, you guys are known for your mountain bikers. I'm like, salute you.
I've been revisiting mountain biking within the last few years, and it's with a very timid mindset.
Yeah.
Because it is very easy to get in over your head quickly.
Yeah, you basically look like everyone I know is eating dirt sandwiches at some point. I want to hit soft things. Like, a wave, but like maybe it hurts. Like, it sounds like a truck, but I'm like, it's just brutal.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, man.
It was such a pleasure getting to catch up with you. We also are psyched that everyone got to tune in and check out the episode. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, dude.
And in the meantime,
Grow out your goatees.
from our fellow goatee wearing friends at Backcountry, we will see you out there.
See ya. Be goats. They're great.